Hello, and welcome to WTF, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
our posting schedule,
where we talk about writing, reading, and a bunch of things in between. But today is mostly about
alpha reading.
And do you know what alpha reading is?
We need to introduce ourselves.
Oh, right. So firstly, ourselves. Who are we?
My name is Mariella May. I am currently working on a fantasy duology. Aubin has been one of my alpha readers and is now one of my editors. She's also my sister.
I am Aubin Elise. I am the author of The Second Nature of Indigo, which you can find a video about on our channel, and it's also up everywhere. You can enjoy it in whatever way you like, audiobook, ebook, physical, paperback, whatever. I'm currently working on my second book.
Something that both of our books have needed is alpha reading.
Yeah.
So today we are going to be discussing how to be a good alpha reader.
Yes.
To your poor writer who
needs your
help.
Feedback.
So desperately needs your help, even if they don't know it.
And if you're a writer watching this video, you can send this to your prospective alpha readers to really help them to understand what it is you want them to do. Or to help you understand a little bit more of the writing process yourself. This falls, I would say, after first draft and after second draft, kind of.
What? So, no. I would say after first draft.
You would say after first? I mean, you can have alpha readers multiple times.
Yeah, I would say right after you finish your first draft, you send it to your alpha readers, and they do the things we will discuss.
Yeah, I mean, once you have a solid first draft.
Yeah, then finished.
I mean,
mine wasn't finished when I was sharing it. I mean,
I was more like a pre-reader.
Yeah.
It was like before it was even born.
But I would consider that
like
alpha.
I guess it's still alpha.
So your alpha readers help with big story. So
yeah, so think major stuff.
Yeah.
Overall big picture. This would be stuff like character development, world building, general plot, like what is the story aspect of it that could be taken away from even the characters in the world.
Another thing that I would say about world building is if it's in like a fantasy world, the magic system, if it's a historical fiction, the accuracy. So and just always the consistency of it. Like does a character description change? Does these things that you don't even notice because you kind of forgot
character spellings. Yeah. Because character name spellings. Now, this isn't a super huge deal.
No, that's more of a line edit.
That is more of a line edit. But it might be visually confusing. If you are an alpha reader and it hasn't gone through many edits, just be prepared. Names might be misspelled.
Or changed.
Because even sometimes we authors forget how we spell our characters' names.
Ravenly.
Ravenly?
That's a misspelling of a character's name in my book that we have had to fix so many times. So
I spelled this one name 4 or 5 different ways in my book.
You're like Shakespeare, spelling his own name. Alrighty, so first point.
Pacing. That was
another. Okay, so that is another thing. I would say that pacing is a really hard thing to edit.
And it is, because it's hard to know what the ideal is if it's not your book.
Yeah. So let's say there's a fight scene and it feels a little drawn out, but then later throughout the story, you realize how something connects to that, and blah blah. You really needed that part of the fight scene, and also you needed this part, but it still feels weird. So it's a really hard dance to try and get all the pacing correct. And sometimes, I think the biggest, saddest thing about pacing is that you're going to have to take out big swaths of your book.
Not have to necessarily.
You probably will. It will probably make your book so much better. Yeah. I had this scene, it was good. It was not great. As, what's his name said?
Stephen King.
Gotta kill your darlings.
Pacing. I feel like the other thing with pacing is that a lot of pacing is in the line work. Yeah. So a fight scene may sound boring, but that's because it's written in a way that's very passive and active, and active scenes require active language. So that's not really your alpha editor job. It's
your alpha editor job is to notice it. Be like, whoa, yes. I noticed that fight scene feels off. And the writer is like, okay, yes, I know that. I'm working on that. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. It's the line editor's job to be like, this sentence doesn't work because X, Y, and Z. Or this paragraph or this scene is too blah-de-da-da.
Yeah.
So one really important thing about alpha reading and beta reading and editing, like, these are all very different jobs, and they need to be taken in a very different way. Like, you do your job, the writer does their job, and it's important that we understand what we're doing as we're working.
Yeah, something that I feel like people get confused about is the difference between an alpha editor and an alpha reader.
Yes, I think I mixed up alpha editor and alpha reader.
So an alpha reader is going through it, they're noticing things, they are reading it like they would a normal book. They're rating it like they would a normal book. They're talking about scenes like we do this all the time. We're like, yeah, that scene was kind of weird in that book, but... And so, like,
I didn't love that arc with the character. It didn't really seem to fit with the overall vibe of that character. Yeah.
And why did that character do that? That character wouldn't dress that way. Stuff like that. So you're just reading it. You're just noticing it. An alpha editor is really going into it and being like, okay, this is stuff that I would change this way. And they're more focusing on how to actually, like, edit it, shockingly.
And I think that is usually the writer themselves. I think we did our own alpha edits.
Yeah, often people will skip alpha editors and use alpha readers as like a springboard to do their own alpha editing.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think for mine, I did, essentially, we were the alpha readers, and then I was the alpha editor, and then I had a developmental editor, which is kind of like an alpha editor. I didn't end up using a ton of that feedback.
But it was a lot for... Alvin's book is historical fiction.
Accuracy to the UK as a whole, because I'm American, but I wrote a book set in England.
Yeah, even stuff like spelling and stuff, because it's different here.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a historical fiction or set in a place that you don't live, having a...
what is it? It's not sensitivity, it's accuracy?
Yeah, like an accuracy.
Reader.
A sensitivity editor.
A sensitivity editor would also be super helpful if you need one.
If it's like about a culture that you aren't in,
or I know they have them for disabilities.
Yeah. So if you're just writing something that you don't know,
and if you can hit two birds with one stone
and have a world,
I have like a developmental editor who's also
a sensitivity editor
who's also living in England, and she's lives in London, then great job. You did two things.
Double.
But
yeah.
In case you can't do that, let's
move on to other stuff that they can do.
Yeah. I would say major story movements is also a super important job of the alpha reading process, and editing also for you as the author, as the author. So this means arcs, this means plot holes, this means unsolved mysteries, all those loose ends that you completely forgot about. And
that one character that's just in that scene for no reason.
And like you, like in the beginning, your beginner writing brain was this is such a cool idea, and then you completely forgot about it, and then looking back, you're like, wow, was that actually that cool?
First of all, I had this character that went on this like whole section of my book with these characters, and Autumn was just like, why is she there? And
I know, I think that was you.
Did I say that? I think we both did.
Okay,
we were both reading like, it over, and I was like,
what? Why is she here?
No reason. Adds nothing to the plot. No,
she just tagged along.
And
then was like happily in the background.
Yeah, and I already had a character who was like semi doing that, and I was like, this is so
there were just two people in the background, just like.
I mean, the other character is necessary.
He is, yes. He's just quiet, so we forget about him. Yeah, he is quiet.
But anyway, no, it's so funny. So when someone points something out, like something like that, out to you, it's probably you just didn't notice it, or like Abin said, it seemed really cool at first, and then you like looked at it closer and you're like, man.
Yeah, and sometimes these unsolved mysteries, have them being pointed out to you, can lead to all kinds of new layers and depths to your book. For instance, like this kind of weirdly loose end that I had a few of these. Oh yeah. Oh no, they're no longer loose ends. No, these are tied back into the center chord, the fray. So yeah, there are a few things that if you read Indigo, they all get tied up. Not all of them, but you know.
A lot of them. I mean, it would be a pretty
some of the important ones.
First book if
they come back.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know that until after I'd published it. So, and Some of them I knew before. Methods, I think what I meant by this is like how things get done. So like plot points can sometimes be really deceiving, because as an author, I've gone through my plot points a lot, and I'm like, yes, this makes total sense. And then I get into the methods of how that happens, and I'm like,
and you're like, this character just doesn't.
This doesn't make sense. Like, yes, these plot points make sense, but there's a billion ways to get from plot point A to plot point B, and then that is where some problems might happen. And there are plenty of ways to change it. There are a million ways to get from A to B. So the method of how you do that could be something that you want to look out for as an alpha reader and an alpha editor.
Yeah, something else I would say with method is even just like building off of that, how the character would do it, because you could be like, okay, this is perfect. This is such a logical way of doing it.
Yeah.
But if it isn't the logical way that your character would do it,
then it feels
illogical. Yeah. Like, it does make sense, but if that's not how that character thinks, then it's not how that character would do it.
Yeah.
So that's just something to keep in mind.
So it is really important to get alpha readers on earlier in the process.
Yeah. Definitely, because you can get stuck. Many times I've gotten stuck, and then I've just read it. Even when I'm just, like, allowed to rant to someone about it, I'm like, more thoughts.
Yeah.
So, especially if they're excited, just... Even if you find a friend that's not technically an alpha reader, just someone you can, like, be excited with, and two, like, that's awesome. Things to avoid. Don't get nitpicky.
We already talked about this, yeah.
It's just,
it's not your job.
You're not a line editor. You're not even an editor. So, just stay loose, stay broad. Also, don't be like, I didn't like this, you should replace it with this. Because that is not your job. That is the author's job, and they can replace it, or fix it, or change it, or leave it, however they like.
Yes, and this is particularly important in the alpha reading stage because the book is so new. I would say with nitpicky, it's like, do get detailed in your reasoning, and sometimes I do this with Ella, like, I break it down. Yeah, like, I have a thought, and then I'm like, here's why I thought it.
Yeah, instead of just being like, I didn't like this scene. It's like, I didn't like this scene because the dialogue was weirdly stiff, and that character was, like, doing stuff that I just don't see that character doing.
Yes.
Or, like, I couldn't picture the room, and the whole space seemed off.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So get detailed as to why you don't agree with the scene. Don't get nitpicky about it.
Sometimes, like, I even get down to the line that bothered me with you. So it's like, you read me a scene recently. I was the first person to read it, and you were just like, here's the scene. And I was like, whoa, that scene really bothered me. And then I was like, why does the scene bother me? And it took me a minute to, like, figure out what bothered me. And then I had to read it again, and it was a few word choices that made her come across as way more aggressive and cruel than Ella meant her to be. So it's like, that's not nitpicky, that's, like, pinpointing the problem. Nitpicky would be...
Because it is also a problem if you just say, like, I didn't know, like, that scene seemed off. I don't know why. I'm just, because then that writer's like,
no,
I don't know. The scene is off. Do I just rewrite it? Or, like, so, yeah, just rereading it, sitting with it for a minute, being like, that seems weird. Also, another thing with this is actively talking to the author with this.
Yes.
Because Aubin could just be like, okay, this intent seemed weird. And I'm like, oh, no, I didn't mean it to come off like that.
Yes,
because then it can be like, oh, okay, that's what felt off to me.
That happened this morning because I'm, I'm line editing Ella's book, but it's kind of also, it's a mix of all the edits, really.
It really is.
It's okay, we adapt. And but I just turned to Ella and I was like, for some reason, this interaction, I didn't understand this, so I just turned to Ella, I read it out loud, and then I was like, okay, I do understand that major thing that was making me confused, but then, like, what do you think about this thing? That, like, in the last
and then we
could
have a discussion.
Yes.
So if ever there's, like, a part where you want to give them advice, but you don't really know how, just either call them or pick a time that you guys can meet and talk about it. If you have to, I would say text or email is better than not talking at all, but...
And if you're kind of... I feel like you could also take notes. Like, that's what taking notes is also about. So if you don't want to call them or they're busy or for some reason it works better for you to take notes, it doesn't break up your flow as much. If you're just like, okay, everything is pretty much fine, here was a small note, then I'd say make a note about it. So definitely take notes. You want to be, like, really actively thinking about the book. If you don't normally do this with books, now would be a good time to turn on that, like, extra layer of creative thinking and very detail-oriented
what I would say
do that.
major point, just basically like, don't let yourself go into the, because often when I'm reading, I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 blah was weird, but overall it was good. If you go into that, then the author will be like, no, I want to know why it's good and not great. Because what their goal is, or what your goal is, if you're the author watching this, is, to make a great book.
Yes.
So if you're just like, it was good, that's not a good thing to hear.
It's never a good thing. And that happened to me with some of my beta readers. They were like, it's good. And I was like, that is the least helpful thing you could say. Even saying, like,
it was bad.
It was bad. I mean, I guess that's equally unhelpful because you give me no reasons. But I feel like people who are ranting often talk more. So
it's better to rant than just be like, yep, it was good.
Yes. Rants are encouraged.
But don't get mean about it.
Don't get mean. No getting mean. General rules otherwise are follow the Brando Sando critique method, which you can find, I'm sure, on his channel. But broad strokes, don't, like we were talking about earlier, don't give suggestions, ask questions, and give your thoughts and reactions. So
you're not fixing it. The author is... Talk about this one.
Oh, don't use meta-knowledge. So sometimes when you're talking to your friends, you tell them things that they wouldn't normally know about your book. For instance, I know a lot about Ella's book that isn't on the page.
And so, like when you're playing D&D, you cannot
metagame.
This is no metagaming
zone. So once you are alpha reading or alpha editing, because you editors also have to do that too, and especially the writers, you cannot magically put whatever you know outside of this onto the page. You have to read exactly what's on the page. And
if you call the author and have a discussion with them, you cannot just take the call, like the information you got from that call, and just put it back on the page. You're like, okay, now it makes sense, because it didn't before.
Because normal readers, people who hopefully buy your book, have to be able to understand and get the full emotional ride of everything.
Yeah, so just take everything with, like, if you have to, I would say read over a part that you talked to the author about, to try and separate it from what you learned from the author and what you learned on the page. So if you need to, read it over again before you read the next chapter or whatever, just so you can be like, okay, explained this to me, but I want to see that on the page because I can't see that right now.
We wish you the best of luck.
Alpha reading, we will hopefully be making a beta video very soon.
Yeah. So,
bye. Good
Best
work.
of luck, reading, writing, editing, all of it. So
I said good work. Good work watching this video to the end. We love you. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share with all your friends, and join the Discord.
Yeah.